Shocking setback. Carney stumbles with Trump. CUSMA now hanging by a thread. Prime Minister Mark Carney now faces a seismic shift in Canada's political and economic landscape. With the 2026 CUSMA review looming, every move is under intense scrutiny. Pressure from Washington and domestic frustration test his promise of stability. Negotiating with a U.S. president who wields tariffs unpredictably requires unmatched precision, timing, and emotional intelligence, even for a seasoned financier and politician like Carney. Fresh from a snap April 28, 2025 election victory, Carney entered office with ambition and cautious optimism, promising disciplined budgeting and stronger national resilience. His approach initially inspired confidence across Canada, but the honeymoon quickly ended. U.S. tensions rose with every conciliatory move, while bold domestic policies created uncertainty. Canadians now wonder if Carney is misstepping or navigating a high-stakes strategy for long-term gains. The sharpest critique came from former U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. In blunt, no-holds-barred terms, he warned that Canada's counter-tariff strategy risks backfiring, possibly undermining CUSMA at the very moment the world is watching for its 2026 review. This wasn't polite diplomatic ribbing, it was a warning shot, suggesting that Canadian resistance might be seen in Washington as obstruction, not strength. Since CUSMA underpins so much of Canada's export economy, that spotlight forces a reckoning, not just about policy, but about posture, tone, and perceived credibility. Carney's government has already made a move that sparked both relief and alarm. It reversed the digital services tax. That legislation was only weeks old when it was repealed, presented as a gesture of goodwill toward the U.S. supporters. Label it pragmatic, a small price to pay to defuse tension. Critics condemn it as a knee-jerk retreat, arguing that Canada gave up a strategic bargaining chip without securing anything in return. In negotiation, power often lies as much in what you retain as what you concede, and this reversal opened questions about how much this government is willing to sacrifice for optics alone. Tariffs continue to play out like a high-stakes game of chess between Ottawa and Washington. Canada quietly paused the next wave of retaliatory duties, signaling restraint. But restraint can easily be misread. To Americans, such pauses may signal weakness. To Canadians, they offer hope for de-escalation. With both teams watching each other's moves, and with the 2026 review on the horizon, even a minor misstep could trigger outsized consequences in diplomatic capitals and along export routes. Parallel to the trade drama, Carney has launched an assertive domestic agenda, Bill C-5 aims to fast-track major infrastructure projects. Whether it's expanding energy corridors, building port upgrades, or approving critical mining investments, the goal is clear: show momentum at home to bolster negotiating strength abroad. Proponents argue that visible progress will reinforce Canada's credibility. Critics, however, warn that speeding approval processes risks sidelining communities, degrading environmental review, and undermining due process. But underneath it all, Bill C-5 captures a government trying to prove that it can move fast and deliver tangible change. Energy policy, in particular, has become a volatile flashpoint. Globally, demand for LNG, rare earths, and clean power is surging, and Canada risks being left behind without speed and ambition. Carney's government is attempting to pivot swiftly, positioning the country as open and ready to compete. Still, years of delay have weakened the narrative. If Canada cannot turn ambition into shovel-ready projects, its negotiating posture on CUSMA will appear considerably weaker. The world wants Canadian resources, but only if they're delivered with certainty and clarity. In Parliament, the pressure is relentless. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre accuses Carney of missteps that sting everyday Canadians: higher grocery prices, trade bottlenecks, and looming mortgage rate struggles. Meanwhile, Premiers Danielle Smith and Doug Ford have pressured Ottawa to reduce red tape and bolster exports. Carney responds that his government's fast-tracked approval processes are already moving. Pipelines, corridors, permits, and projects are advancing. Yet voters are demanding proof, not promises, and the political terrain is shifting. On one side, Ottawa is racing to deliver. On the other, impatience is mounting in kitchens and boardrooms nationwide. Public sentiment remains fragile. Almost everyone agrees Canada needs to be resilient. Yet many want resilience without the short-term cost. Voters want lower prices now and a stronger economy later. Every tariff list, every trade volley, and every new factory announcement carries emotional weight. When your car payment, grocery bill, and job security hinge on cross-border diplomacy, trade policy doesn't feel theoretical, it feels personal. Meanwhile, domestic policy debates have become symbolic battlegrounds. Nova Scotia's decision to fine individuals $25,000 for walking in fire-prone forests ignited fierce debate about governance, panic, and personal freedom. Supporters argue that tough penalties are a necessary deterrent in an age of climate-driven emergencies. Critics see it as overreach that criminalizes responsible behavior. This is a microcosm of the larger battle Canada is fighting. When public anxiety is high, balancing freedom with safety becomes politically dangerous, and the same dynamic now colors how trade strategy is framed: negotiation or capitulation, pragmatism or panic. So, is Carney truly stumbling? Perhaps, but often in politics, that line between stumble and intentional pivot is razor-thin. Pausing tariffs and scrapping the digital services tax might look like retreat. Bill C-5's infrastructure blitz might appear reactionary. Yet, unless Canada presents a real, tangible, saleable package to Washington, one that includes energy access, trade stability, and mutual benefit, CUSMA is not just vulnerable. It's hanging by a thread, and Canada's future prosperity depends on whether that thread can hold. What Carney needs now isn't more optics, it's coalition building, domestic and international. He must unite premiers, business leaders, organized labor, and even Mexico behind a shared vision, a plan that addresses U.S. priorities while safeguarding Canadian dignity, sovereignty, and opportunity. That requires delivering on the ground, faster pipelines and upgraded ports, stronger supply chains, while framing it in a way that Washington and Canadians alike can believe in. As 2026 draws nearer, Canada's economic fate will increasingly reflect how effectively its leaders navigate this tightrope. Delivering concrete energy deals, infrastructure milestones, and smoother trade flows could transform the stumble into a setup, a strategic pivot toward resilience. But fail again, and the political storm may not just escalate. It could engulf Carney's leadership. For Canada and its Prime Minister, the coming months are far more than a trial by fire. They're a defining reckoning, a moment to show whether the country can still lead through complexity, or whether it will be defined by its missteps.